I'm going to start recording as well. And I think it is time to get started officially. So welcome and thank you for joining us. And there I am. So nice to see you. And if Alaska wants to kick us off, I have started the meeting here and recording this one for the records.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. This is Cherry Herman with SDS. Looks like we have a small group today. I'm hoping more folks join us. Looks like there's still people signing in, so thank you for joining us. For our first session in June, already, it's June. Today's focus and our focus for June is all about the aggregator. And as I mentioned before, it's where the magic happens. And that's where we're spending a lot of our time at the state, testing and getting it ready to roll out to all of you. So today, you're going to hear a lot about that, some tips and best practices and what your focus should be as you prepare to enter into the aggregator at your agencies. We'll do our best to answer questions. Use the Q&A portion of the app or the Zoom section there, and we will answer your questions as we go. But thank you again, and we look forward to sharing some more information. But again, the aggregator, that's what we're all about right now, and I look forward to your participation and good questions and working with us as we move forward here. Thank you, Kevin.
All right, thanks, Cherry. Okay, let us press on here with the usual fine print. And welcome officially here. Today, as Cherry mentioned, we're gonna do our little quick introductions. We're gonna let you know how we're doing on EVV as a whole team. That's all of us, including you on the call here. We're gonna reveal a new exception code and how that works, so something new. And then as Cherry mentioned, we're gonna talk a lot about the aggregator connections, when that is gonna affect you. And we're also gonna talk about how to prepare for the aggregator. And again, once again, we're gonna remind you that preparing for the aggregator just means capturing good EVV data. That is the bulk, very much the best way to be prepared for connecting to the aggregator is just be good at collecting EVV data and cleaning it up as it goes. So, oopsie. All right, and then we'll give you a little sneak preview of the extra thing that you will do once you are connected to the aggregator. So you get to kind of see what that is going to look like. But again, keeping up with your setup is still a part of your regular EVV experience here. And then remind you that support is always available. All right, if you haven't checked out this website, again, lots of good information, including signing up for this new webinar. And also a lot of you probably got an email personally inviting you to sign up as well. So anybody who's been involved in anything, any part of any communication, should be getting those invites. If you know somebody who wants those and isn't, just go here and send us a message or reply to one of the emails that'll come at the end and let us know. These are open to everybody who wants to know what's going on. Real quick, getting around in Zoom, when the time for question answer, you'll be able to unmute or share your camera or stop those things using these buttons here. You can raise your hand using the raise your hand button here. If you have a question, we'll keep an eye on that. The best way though is to enter a question in the Q&A. So you might see two of those options. Is it better to do a Q&A or a chat? It's better to put a question in the Q&A section. It's easier to track for us and for you to see which answer goes with which question versus, as you can see, versus chat, which is just an ongoing running conversation, which is a great place to say hi. So please use both. But if you have a question and you'd like an answer, please put it in the Q&A section there. Again, some of those emails here If you have a question, send it in at any time related to any part of this process here as well. All right, so I'm Kevin. Jody, I think, is having a little Zoom difficulty, may be joining us shortly here. But Jody's been involved, and we'll probably hear a bit from Jody. And Shawnette, who's been part of this, particularly on the aggregator piece of this, has been involved in Alaska for a long time and is going to play a role in the training of the aggregator piece. So Shawnette is here, and Nadine, also making sure you know Nadine is overseeing our billing. Again, kind of put it out there before, aggregator stuff is basically about billing. It's about billable EVV services. So you might want to start rethinking about your connection and what Therap does in terms of billing, but we're not going to cover that today. Real quick, again, why are we here? Why are we doing all of this? That's because of the Federal Cures Act. What we're focusing on today is the aggregator piece. So again, everybody has to do EVV. You can do that in Therap or in a third-party system. And for that reason, all that data must be rolled up and collected in an aggregator. And so regardless of how you collect your EVV data at the point of service, you will submit your data into the aggregator, which is the state of Alaska's way to collect and make that data usable for their purposes and for the federal requirements. So we are well underway here, and we are now pushing into the aggregator phase here very soon. Just a little pause here to see how we're doing. And when I say we, I really mean all of us, particularly the PCA workers and the providers and families who are out there making this happen. So I crunched the numbers from January 1 to May 30th, or whatever the last day of May is. We have 173,017 check-ins. So well done. That's a lot of people getting service and a lot of federal required visit information being recorded. So just how that breaks down, you can see we're getting, January is probably the highest for probably reasons other than just services, as folks were getting their feet under them. But we see a kind of stable between 30 and 35,000 seems to be visits per month or check-ins per month. So we're seeing some trends and patterns there. How many individuals? I still can't quite figure out what happened to 100 or so individuals in the month of February that did not get services, but they showed back up in March for their services. So besides this unusual dip, you can see we're in a pretty close range, give or take 50 to 100 individuals receiving services each month. And these are unduplicated individuals at provider level. How many of these visits are self-check-in? Thousands, tens of thousands of them a month. So these are visits without a pre-schedule. How many of them are coming in from mobile? So here we have a little bit of a comparison month by month, as well as your check-in and your check-outs. So the blue bar here is your check-ins and the orange bar is your check-outs. Just the nature of what PCAs are dealing with and everything they got on their plate seems to be that check-ins never quite match check-outs, but you can see very close, and you can see very stable there as well at close to 30,000 visits or mobile checkouts and check-ins a month. All right, how about IVR, that telephony calling in from a landline? So in January, a couple of you just gave it a test to see what you thought of it. And we've seen a nice little growth on that. Still, we're talking in the hundreds of visits, where mobile we were talking in tens of thousands. So see on that IVR increase as it becomes useful for some of you. But again, the data showing it is very much a alternative method, not a primary in any way. How about offline? Very little use of offline here. We saw it kind of spike in March and then kind of drop back to what may be its baseline. Just a few dozen visits coming in from the offline method, which is that using the smartphone, but when you do not have internet connectivity. And FVV, also gaining in popularity, saw some steady growth. A lot of you didn't even have your FVV devices in January. So again, that seems to be maybe getting close to its baseline. So relatively popular, between 1,500 and 2,000 FVV check-ins in April, March, April, and May. So that is being utilized. This one, this stat I do quite like, because this is what we were hoping to see, and it's just a reflection of the skill set of the providers out there. We knew January was going to be difficult. There was a lot of manual entries that had to be cleaned up. Looks like nearly 16,000 visits that had to be manually created in January, and those dropped off very rapidly in February, and hard to see here, but they continue to decline in small amounts at this point after this huge decline. But it's clear that folks are just getting better and better at this, and there's less and less manual. It'll never go away completely, but it's nice to see that you guys are doing well with it, and your staff are doing well with it, and the number of manual visits and edits that need to happen are shrinking. So well done there. And then if you want to just compare the big picture, where are the visits coming from? There's numbers that this one's at 173,000 here. So total visits. Of that, you can see almost all of them are mobile. IVR and offline don't even appear on this graph. And FVV is just a tiny little blip. And then manual and mobile are pretty much closing it out for the bulk of the visits there. So interesting stuff. Well done. Definitely seeing some baseline patterns. Those are the kind of indicators that CMS and the Cures Act requires as well. So keep up the great work. Any questions about any of this data here? Pause for a second.
Nothing
And there was a
coming through
question.
Q&A. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say there was one answered already by Shawnette.
Oh, cool.
And we seem to have affirmed that there's a system maintenance issue that occurs on Saturdays and early Sundays. Maybe that impacts IVR.
10 p.m. on Saturdays.
Yeah, and that would impact all users too, just so you guys are aware. We have had quite a few updates on the system, primarily due to EVV. So we will have those scheduled maintenance times. But just as a reminder, on the login page, when you guys are doing your initial login, right below it'll tell you when the next system maintenances are going to occur. And oftentimes we have information to let you know what's actually going to change, so you can let your team members know. I usually recommend that you still have staff check in and check out when they're able to, and then the scheduling admin would need to put an edit that it's a system maintenance. Therap was down. Great question.
Yep, and that is definitely in that window. Generally, the updates happen starting around midnight Pacific time, which would be about 11 o'clock window there in Alaska. All right. And there is advance notice, you just may not notice it. All right, let's talk about some new stuff here. The new stuff is exception codes. So these are not new, but wanted to put it in context. These are the exception codes, the choices you have when you have to fix something that didn't go right in the real world at the point of service. So was the FVV device not working? Was the phone not charged? What did we get there and the individual turned out not to be there after we checked in? Things like that. Those are some of the exception codes. There is a new one, and this one is designed, and I know we've had questions about how does EVV work with out-of-state travel. So I think we've addressed some of those in terms of the functionality. You can check in the Therap app will geolocate you anywhere on planet Earth, actually, if you're getting a signal. So the new exception code is approved out-of-state travel. So this is to be used when you are checking in out of state and you already have that approval. Hopefully you've done it in the right order, and to get those visits into the aggregator. So we'll talk more about some of this back and forth, but there are times when the aggregator is going to not accept your visit, not because you did anything wrong per se in the process of checking in, but to add an extra validation and to make sure that you are signing off on a particular visit. So this is an example. If you have an out-of-state check-in and you're approved, go ahead and use your EVV data, check in when you start, check out when you finish. The aggregator is gonna say, we need a little extra step here, and you are going to be required to add that exception code in order for the aggregator to say, great, just wanted to make sure you knew that this one happened out of state and that this was part of an approved process. So new exception code, approved out of state travel, get familiar with it. And I think we might even have a little demonstration of that coming up as you kind of see how the interactions with the aggregator work. All right. So hold on to that one. We'll come back to that one and demonstrate it. Where are we at with the aggregator phases of going live? System design, initial validation, decisions. I've shared this slide before. Go back here for a second. As I mentioned, likely to evolve. That new exception code approved out of state travel is an example of that evolution. It's coming from what you guys are doing, the questions you have, situations that come up, and ways to help improve the whole process. And again, make sure that you have the required federal EVV data and that you can get paid for those services going forward. So again, that's when I talk about likely to evolve. Things like that are likely to continue. Don't expect the worst with those, expect the best. A lot of those evolutions are going to be things designed to make it work better for you and how you're providing services. So. All right. So next,
we do have a great question.
What's that?
We do have a great question. Rob asked, would we need amendment from the state for the out-of-state approval as they do with DAHAB and other waiver programs? I'm not sure I have the answer for that, but maybe one of the state team.
Yes, this is Cherry. Lotta, do you want to answer that?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Of course, with travel, anytime that you travel outside of the recipient's location, there is the PCA when traveling request, or CFC PCS when traveling request. So those should be completed for PCA travel. So with the amendment, there are rules around amendments, for PCS or CFC PCS. So if you have questions regarding that, those should be sent to the program team. So it would be Rodney George, Jerry Fromm, or Lauren. So does that answer the question regarding PCA travel?
It seems to. Thank you, Lotta. Just want to affirm that, you know, the PCS travel process hasn't changed. We're just working that process into the EVV system. So waiver still has its process, PCS still has its process. That hasn't changed. It's just how we want the system to behave with that data.
Yes. Yeah. Hang on to some of those. You'll see what we mean. And I think that makes it a little clearer. All right. So the current phase we are in, and we are near the end of this phase, which is testing all of these kinds of scenarios, like testing what happens when you check in outside of the state. What happens when you check in and you miss an address? What happens when you check in with one method and check out with another? So going through those kinds of testing for you in a demo context, and getting ready to have the production account available where the real information will go in. So how this is going to impact you if you are a provider, this is how it's going to come to your world. There are two pathways forward. We've talked about that in one of those first slides. And it depends on what choice you made for your EVV solution at the provider level. Are you using the Therap system or a third-party system? So first, let's go through door A here and look at the Therap Alaska system here. So we are very close, as you can see, to going live with the first pilot providers who will be the first ones connected to the aggregator and pushing over data in real time. They will get training on some of the setups, some of the things we're going to cover today. We're going to review those again with you individually. But obviously, the more you've been on top of them, the less cleanup and things you have to fix. If you've stayed on top of those things, there will be just a couple of new setup things to take care of. Those pilot providers will start their near real-time connection to the aggregator. And then their historical EVV data will be pushed over going back to January 1. Giving that a little bit of time just to make sure it all goes as expected. Then the rest of you, if you are not one of the initial pilot providers, will be contacted. So we're not very many days from that as well. You'll be contacted to schedule a time. You'll have lots of openings and availability to coordinate with Shawnette and Jody and myself to meet with us, to review the setup and to help you through that process and complete your connection to the aggregator. Once you have completed that training and we've verified that everything is ready, also you will get your historical data back to 1.1 pushed over. We'll assist you with that big push. And from that point on, your data will be going into the aggregator in near real time, which is somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour in most cases. All right. After that, we will provide ongoing support. So you will get support when you have a question about a visit or things like that. We're going to try to give you as many resources and we try to make it as easy as possible, but there's always going to be a question here or there, just like there was as we started with the check-ins. So Therap will continue to provide that support to you and help you get to what everybody's going to like, which is accepted visits in the aggregator. And you'll get to see exactly what that means here in just a bit. All right, any questions about that piece? Looks like no. All right, so yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is Cherry again, just highlighting that the next 2 or 3 weeks are are very focused and very busy for all the providers that are impacted with this. So it's all of you. So just be aware, we're going to be reaching out. Double check your schedules and make time for that, and we're here to help.
Yes, we're going to try to make it as easy as possible. But you do want to, for your own benefit, you do want to make sure your visits are good and your setup is correct. A good time to pause and check on that. We'll give you a couple of guides here today as well for those who joined us. All right, so very similar pathways, but just slightly different for the folks using the third-party systems. The end of the path is your data goes into the aggregator in near real time, regardless of which door you go through. But third parties take a little bit of different steps to get there and a slightly different timeline. First one, we've actually been in this phase with the third-party software and providers, is the required agreements. All of this is HIPAA information going into a secure HIPAA system, but you got to have BAAs and all of those kind of legal agreements in place. If you're a provider using a third-party software, we also want you to know that we don't just reach out to software providers to talk about you. You need to bless that, and you need to actually initiate that. So you need to say, this is the software we're working with, and you guys have done that. But we want to verify that you're still, that was a few months ago. We want to verify that you're still working with that entity and approach the contacts that you have identified in your relationship with that software vendor. So those agreements are very important. Please do, if you're on the call and you have some of these still waiting for signatures, please do get them signed. We cannot proceed and won't proceed with the next steps of your compliance until we have all the proper BAA and agreements in place to start having those conversations and sharing that information. All right, so that has been happening for a while. So some of you are still hung up there. If you're on this call, you should have some emails guiding you on how to get unstuck there. For those of you that have completed those agreements, you actually already have in hand the specifications, which are very much technical documents, very much for software developers on the requirements to send data to the aggregator. Again, if you're using Therap, we've taken care of that. If you're using a third party, your third party software needs to develop that interface. It also has a set of business case requirements, which are to make sure, for example, send over and out-of-state travel and make sure the correct exception code is in place, things like that. So those are in hand. If you have assigned your agreements, you have these in hand as well, and your software provider can start planning on those. Starting this Friday, if you have those agreements signed, you will be starting to be contacted to get access to the test environment. In that environment, you will be able to actually test your interface. Push, again, this is non-PHI, so pretend information that is real visit information, but not real individuals. Push that information over and get real responses and be able to demonstrate that you can send over all the different combinations of visit information and scenarios that can happen in order to ultimately get good EVV accepted into the aggregator. So again, we are right on the verge of that with the third party folks. We understand your developers will probably need a little time to test that. But starting once they have access, we will be ready to receive back the completed test results and to verify that all of those are done and successful, in which case the third-party systems will be called certified Alaska EVV systems, and they will be given credentials to connect to the real aggregator, the production aggregator, to push real information over in that near real time, same expectation. And then there will be coordination, again, same expectation, to push that historical EVV visits back from January 1, and then ongoing in near real time EVV visits to be pushed over into the aggregator. Along with that, Therap will provide some aggregator training and support. We don't support your use of your third-party software. You have that in place with your team. We will support the aggregator component and provide assistance to you and your third-party software should you have questions about a particular visit or exception code or things like that. And you will have login access to view the aggregator, same as the folks using the Therap system. You'll have that same level of access. All right, any questions about your pathway into the aggregator?
And Kevin, this
Yes.
is Lotta. You do have a question in the chat, and it's, who do we call to check whether or not we have the required requirements and certification business case requirements?
You can email me at that AK support. I'll post it up at the end as well. However, if you are using Therap to capture your visits, you do have all those in place. You signed those way back before you even started using the Therap system. So only if you're using a third-party system do you have additional or actually not additional, they're basically the same requirements. We just never asked you to sign anything back in December. So basically same requirements for third party. Again, we just didn't put those documents out there until this time. So I think you're a Therap user, so you are all set, Arctic Care. Just keep pressing on with what you're doing. All right, good questions. Good questions. Okay, let us go real quick. Aggregator basics again. So you might take a slightly different path, but you're all going to end up at the same place. So aggregator takeaways. This is not for PCA workers. This is view only. This is the view only purpose is just if you think something is going weird and I want to see it for myself. You can log into the aggregator. It will be limited. It's really for admins only. And it's viewed based on your Medicaid provider ID or IDs if you have more than one. You will be able to see what the aggregator has accepted in there and what it has not, or what it rejected in some cases. And you will not be able to change anything by logging into the aggregator. All of your interactions with the aggregator will happen in your EVV solution. So we're going to actually show you that in just a second here, or in just a couple of minutes, how you will fix visits that the aggregator has a problem with. You will only view things in the aggregator. So once you've kind of established that, that process, there's not too many reasons to go into the aggregator, but by all means, help yourself and log in there as often as you want. The same information you're going to see in the aggregator will also come to you in your EVV system as a message, same message. So you will see that in Therap, and you will see something similar in your third-party systems as well. Again, your EVV visits are transmitted to the aggregator in near real time. So if you are not checking every day, your visits from yesterday are going to be over there waiting for you to do your quality assurance still in your system. And you will get, it's two-way interface. So messages EVV visits get sent over and a response message comes back from the aggregator to let you know if there's any problems with your visit. And it will also tell you what the problem is. All right. Again, Aggregator rejects visits do not meet criteria. You can fix these. How do you fix them? The exception codes, we're going to give you some examples of that as well. So that is very high level Aggregator basics, but the Aggregator is designed to be a fairly simple tool, much simpler than all the complexities of capturing EVV at the point of service and all the different options you have. So again, how do you become an expert at the Aggregator? You become an expert in your EVV system. Do your quality assurance. We did a whole lot of things with you back in January and December of a part of a setup. Make sure those stuck and that you kept doing those. So every time you hire a new staff, make sure you're updating all the important parts like the rendering provider number. Every time you take on a new individual that you're providing services to, make sure you're updating that information. You will find out really quickly here with the Aggregator connection if you have not. And again, we're going to meet with you and help you clean that up. But if you have not updated that and it's not part of your ongoing setup, you will find out that you will know that it's missing because the Aggregator will find things that are missing before it will accept them in the Aggregator. And you're going to want to get your visits accepted in the Aggregator because at some point in the future, you will not be able to, when you submit a claim, it will check to make sure there's a matching visit in the Aggregator in order for you to get paid. So now is the time to practice and make sure you're getting good EVV data, and you're going to have some time to practice getting your data accepted in the Aggregator. And I think if you're capturing good EVV data, you will see it is just automatically getting accepted. You don't really have to do anything else other than just check so that you feel good about it. All right, so let us go and look at a couple of things live. Again, we've covered this before. We're going to cover this one again. It's kind of a setup reminder, some of the quality assurance to prep you for the Aggregator connection, some tips and tricks to make sure your rendering provider numbers are set up and make sure they're correct. If you type them in wrong, you may not have noticed, but the Aggregator notice, and make sure your demographics and information like that is correct. So we'll go over to Jody for that, and then we will do a little sneak preview of what quality assurance extra step you will do after you're connected to the Aggregator and getting your visits accepted here. So, all right, thanks, Jody. Jody, if you're talking, you are muted as well, so.
All right, I had a hidden panel to unmute. Hey, everyone. I'm going to go over some ways to check to make sure everything's set as far as geolocations, rendering provider IDs, etc. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk a little bit about those geolocations that have to be set on all of those individual demographic forms. The good news is that you don't have to go into each one of those IDFs to see if the addresses are geolocated. We do have a report for you. So in the agency reports tab, and if you don't have that, you need to turn that on your user privileges. Most of the admin staff have already been set up with that. So I'm going to come in here to my agency reports tab. And here under the report library, if I go ahead here and click on view, you'll see a whole bunch of different reports here. The one here that we want to look for is the one with the geolocation. I always like to type the least amount of things to get the most amount of yields to make sure I'm not filtering anything out. So I'm just typing in geo there. I'm going to click on search. And here we have one, IDF addresses geolocation report. All right, so when you click on this here, there's no other searching you do. It's automatically going to give you everything here. So you can go ahead and take this report and you could export it to Excel. This way you could go ahead and filter it for however you want. But you'll see on this report here, we have this last row here is the address geolocated. And we see simply yes or no. So in Excel, if I were to dump this out in Excel, I could go ahead and filter out for all those no's. And then we know how we have to go in there and update those individuals' geolocations. So this report is really helpful for you to see that all in one swoop without having to go in there and doing one at a time. It also gives you some other information as well. Another one I want to point out here is the Medicaid number. All right, so the Medicaid number is another one of the required fields that we need. So this is a great place to go ahead and check that Medicaid number, that it's there. If you see any missing ones, you'll have to go in there and update it. You'll also see this is a demo environment. These are test individuals, but you'll see some of these are not correct. It's a 10-digit number we should be seeing here, there are no dashes. So I know for any of these folks here that have these 9 digits with a dash, they're not gonna go over to the aggregator. So 2 things on this report for the geolocation. First one's the Medicaid number, and then the other one is making sure that the address is geolocated. All right, so once again, this is that report, IDF addresses geolocation report. All right, the next thing I'm going to point out before I go ahead and pass things over to Shawnette is the rendering provider IDs. So these are those IDs assigned to a staff. We want to make sure that they all have their rendering provider IDs. Okay, there isn't a report we can do. We can go ahead and do this just by doing a search and then exporting the search. So here in my admin tab here, this first section here is general. If I scroll down a little bit further, I have care, and then service directory, and then billing. So this is the last one here. I'm going to go into the billing section here, right? And I'm going to come in here to where it says billing provider and click on search. Okay, so for this, if I want to make sure I want to see everyone's rendering provider IDs, I'm going to actually leave everything here blank. All right, I want to make sure I see everything, and I'm going to click on search here. All right, and I could take this report and I can also export this to Excel. So you see here I have the ability to export this to Excel, and then I could just clarify and make sure that all of those rendering provider IDs are in there. So we have 2 different kinds of billing providers. We have our agency ones. So you should be seeing one for each area you might be in. Anchorage, Fairbanks, Osceola, whatever it might be. So you'll see one of those, but then you'll also see your staff ones in there. So for those rendering provider IDs. So those are the 2 different reports you can go ahead and run. One of them is to show all those rendering provider IDs. This one we're looking at right now. That geolocation report is going to show you that all the Medicaid numbers are there as well as they're geolocated. So that's what I had to share with you there. Any questions before I go ahead and pass the mic to Shawnette?
Judy, I just put in, there was a question on how you got here. Do you want to show them that one more time?
Sure. Yeah. So we have a tab here that's not the agency tab, but the agency reports tab. All right. If you go ahead and click on that agency reports tab, we see our report library. And we would just go ahead and click on view here. And this is where I came in here and I just typed in geo and search. And then I found that report right there for me. All right. And then just another summary here for that billing rendering provider ID. For that, I'm going to go into my admin tab. I'm going to scroll down until I see the billing section. And this is where I'm going to go to billing provider and click on my list. Oops, not new, but search. Billing provider search. All right, and then if I go down to the bottom and click on search, that's going to show me all the rendering provider IDs for my staff. And this report too, you can dump out into Excel. All right. Cool.
Jody, I may have missed, did you show them how to geolocate their sites?
Oh yeah, thank you, Shawnette.
You're welcome.
Let me do that. So this might have been done already. This is also a required field. So in my admin tab here, I see here where it says site, and I'm going to come in here and click on list. So you're going to have a site for each area you're in, for each one of those unique provider IDs you have. So we need to have addresses in here. So since none of these sites have addresses, they're not going to go ahead and be accepted. So I would have to go ahead here and click on this. Same way I did for the individuals, I want to put the address in here and make sure that that address is geolocated. We understand that it's not going to, this isn't pulling the data, but it's just a required field to have, that we have that information. Who knows if something will be done in the office, but we just want to have that information in here as well, and geolocated. Otherwise, you will get an error message as well. So just all those sites need to be entered addresses and geolocation. Once again, that might have been done already, but you can always go back and just double check to make sure. Once again, admin tab, site, and then click on list. All right. Cool.
Now, you guys, the information that we cover with you, we're going to cover with you on our calls that we have with you. We just want to give you kind of a sneak preview. And like the sites in particular, if you guys do that beforehand, that's just one last step that we have to address during our calls. So it'll save you guys some time. Same with the individual's address as well. So we want to make sure we introduce that now, so you guys have that kind of heads up information. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. And Jody, can you confirm you can see my screen?
Yes, Jeanette, we're seeing it.
Thank you. Okay, so you guys, I'm in that same demo account that Jody and Kevin have been in today. And so again, everything you guys see is fictitious information. Once we do the setup, which we will do that with you guys in a lot more detail when we have our calls with you guys. But after that process is done, I want to touch base in this. Again, I'm still in my admin tab. I'm going to scroll down to my scheduling section. You guys are already familiar with the Therap process for this section right here. But there's this step right here, Therap EVV configuration. We will work with you guys on this process. I'll give you a sneak peek. But again, don't worry about this process because some of this information isn't going to be received until that initial phone call, such as your aggregator ID, client ID, and there's going to be a client secret password that will go in here. And you guys won't have to keep entering this. It'll be like a one-time setup. Your billing providers are going to be set up by your agency. So once those are set up, we would simply click plus to add them over here. And again, we will walk through that process with you guys. So my example over here, you can see the Anchorage region and this agency name, but this is one we've been using for our demo. So that's just kind of a sneak peek. But after that is done, after we get you guys all set up and you're now live, we are going to help assist you guys with pushing the visits over from January 1st. So meaning we're going to have to update some service auths and all that good stuff. But after that, your current data is going to go over and it's going to be right here in this Therap EVV visit. The same information is going to be sent over to Therap Aggregator. And what is reflected in your Therap account is going to be reflected in the Aggregator account. And if there's changes that need to be made, you're going to want to be in your Therap account to make those changes. So today I wanted to just give you guys a sneak peek just in case you guys are not familiar with this process and just kind of show you guys what that's going to look like. I'm going to go ahead. You can search by form ID. You guys will learn about this if you haven't already learned. That's that unique identifier on each form. You can search by different statuses. Invalid means it does not meet the preset qualifications in order for it to go over to the Therap Aggregator. Validated means you met all the requirements. It is now being sent over and it's being processed. At the end of the day, what we're all hoping for is those visits get accepted. If visits get rejected, you'll see that right away. And it's not, and sometimes visits get rejected due to you guys may have created a pre-approved schedule. You realize the staff wasn't going to work and you deleted that slot. That would be a good example of rejected. And then occasionally you may see an aggregator error. And we're going to try to create some sort of list for you guys in the future. But for now, it's pretty self-explanatory. And for everyone who's on the call, I've had the opportunity to work with other aggregators. And I think that the Therap Aggregator is pretty simplistic and easy to use. So I'm hoping you guys will find that to be true as well. Now, there's a different ways that you can search. You can search by check-in date from and to, or you could also search just from enter date from and to. For today's example, you guys, I'm just going to pull in today's date for entered, just to simplify the process. Okay, I'm going to click search. Once I click search, these are the EVV visits. And if you guys needed to, you could actually click on the slot to open these up. What I wanted to show you guys is the status. Now, right now, this will show you all statuses, but in my date range that I selected, I only have invalid and validated. Invalid is specifically letting you guys know that things need to be corrected. Okay, so I'm going to pull that one up in just a second. Validated means it meets the Therap's EVV qualifications in order to go over to the Therap aggregator. And that means we're waiting for it to then finally be processed and have it stamped with accepted. Okay. Today, though, I want to show you guys the invalid because this is going to happen where we need to make some corrections. So we can see I just changed my status to invalid. And you can see the validation message. This is what's telling you what needs to be corrected in your Therap account. So right away, these visits are not going to show up in the aggregator, by the way. When they're invalid, you're going to have to make those corrections. But you can see the visit check-in address is required and the checkout address is required. So we're going to have to update that. Another good example, it looks like for Brianna Sosa, she has an invalid Medicaid ID, and the Therap EVV is actually going to tell you what that issue is. So it's telling me this ID does not match our qualifier, which is a 10-digit format. So I'm going to show you guys how to correct this one. We'll do one together today. Here's another one. We do have that new exception code that Kevin mentioned earlier on our call today, that exception code 12. Again, if by some chance you guys are doing outside travel, of course, you're going to get it approved by the state of Alaska, your same process that is current today. And if you guys have to add an exception, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means that you have to explain why, and by selecting that exception. I'm going to pause for just a second. If this is a great question, Rebecca, she just asked, so if we go in and have to correct a checkout time, will we need to add the address also? And Kevin is answering that right now.
Yeah. So if you go in and correct the checkout time, will you need to add that? Yes, if the address isn't there, yes. If it's already there, then no. So you kind of will fix just what's missing and what needs to be fixed. So if they mobile checked in, the address is already going to be there. You won't have to add. And we did a couple of examples here to purposefully be missing some information. So.
Perfect. Okay. And just like normal, you guys are currently putting in those exceptions to when you're updating the check-in time or updating the checkout time. So same process that you would have to select that. So for those out-of-state visits, again, if you guys are traveling, you've got that approved, you're good to go. You're going to check in and check out like you normally would. And then you guys, the Therap admins would need to go in and add that exception 12 code to let the system know that this was approved out-of-state travel. And then it's going to go over successfully to Therap aggregator. Okay. Again, finally, we have another one that has, it's missing the check-in address and checkout address. So you would want to go update that. So I think what we'll do is we're going to go ahead and take a look at this one. So this is the Medicaid ID. This is tied to the individual. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard, you guys, and I'm going to jump over. Actually, I'm still in my admin tab. I'm going to go to my list and I'm going to pull up this individual. I'm going to Brianna. Here she is. And here's that Medicaid number that I can see that matches what we have in the system. I'm simply going to open this up, you guys, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and click edit. And I'm going to edit that Medicaid number. That was her correct Medicaid number. I have it on file. It's right next to my desk. I'm going to update that. And then I'm going to make sure to scroll down and click update for this one visit. And now that one's going to go through okay. So the main thing is whenever you're doing your EV search, you have the ability to look at those visits, see what the validation message is so that you guys have the opportunity to go in and make those corrections as needed. Some of those other examples, we would have to actually click on the slot ID and go down to the bottom and edit and put in the address where they were supposed to check in and check out from.
Yeah, let's do that. So, and one thing to clarify too, there's so Shauna, go ahead and fix one of those other visits.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's change this. Let's pull up the one. Do you want to show them the out-of-state one?
Yeah, let's do that. So this one's the hopefully there's nothing wrong with the visit. It just is truly the process is making you confirm that you know this was an out-of-state visit and that you have approval for it. So it can be very quick. Yeah, Shauna, you can actually open the visit right from this screen. and scroll down to the bottom. And you're just going to add an exception code. No, you don't have to update that at all.
Oh, no, we're not going to change the address. We're just going
Nope.
to come down here.
All we're going to
put
do is
12.
say we know it's out of state. And you're going to
So
choose
it's
that. It's that near the top. It's alphabetical. So approved out of
There you go.
state. And you can put in a comment. Yep, we recommend a best practice on these things. You saw there's 180,000 visits in just 5 months. When you're doing it, you're sure you're going to remember what happened, but I can promise you in a few months, and when you go back to look at one of those, you're going to go, why did I do this? The comment is definitely a best practice. Add those as much as possible.
Yes, I always recommend that. The other thing is too, you might have a scheduling admin today that leaves 6 months from now, and then you're doing auditing or surveyors coming into your agency and has some questions. And even if it was me, the scheduling admin 6 months from now, I might not remember exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So it's always best practice.
So now,
And this is Lotta.
yeah, go ahead.
With the description, this would be a great place to put the approval letter information, the approved dates of PCA travel. So if you got an approval letter from June 1st through June 9th, that would be a great date span to put. Approved PCA travel from June 1st through June 9th. Again, that's just best practice.
Yes, the more again, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands of visits a month, the more you put in there, the more likely you don't have to go scrambling for why those changes were made later. So one of the things I want to
And
note
in addition
here,
to that,
yeah, go ahead. Yes.
oh, sorry, Kevin. Yeah, in addition to that, it's easily identifiable when you're looking and reviewing the information. So if you already have comments in your description there and you have your approval letter, then you can say that, oh, I've checked this, and you can move on instead of going back to revisit.
Absolutely. So one of the things I want to make sure it's pointed out, visits go over in near real time. They go over and a message comes back. And then that is kind of the end of the process. So all of those initial visits were checked in by staff or by administrators or whoever, and those visits were sent over, and then the message came back. That is the end of the process. They're not going to get sent over again unless you do something. So now if Shawnette goes and does that search again for today, Shawnette, go ahead and do that. Same search. See if we're fast enough to catch it in validated status. So let's see here. That was, who do we fix?
We did 2. We did.
No, we only did 1, believe it or not. So there it is, Frank Romero. See the one? So I'll talk about that one, but let's go to Frank Romero. So that visit was accepted. It was invalid. Now it's validated, which means that's letting you know, because of the changes we made, your Therap system is pushing it back over to the aggregator again, because you added the exception code, you took an action on it. It's now going over, and now you just kind of have to wait a little bit of time for the aggregator to process it, to get in your queue going over, get a message and get in your queue to come back. So I would not recommend sitting there waiting for it, but you want to kind of keep an eye on it and maybe check back later in the day or every other day or whatever your time frame is to keep up with all of those thousands of visits. So that one's now in process. We'll wait and see. It's possible the aggregator found some other problem with it, but not very likely because we've checked in and out for Frank before, and we saw that message meant he was out of state. So we pushed that over. Now notice the visit right above there where it said there was a wrong ID. So this visit, we haven't actually changed the visit. We went and fixed something that needed to be fixed in the IDF, in the demographics, which is why you want to fix those ahead of time as much as possible. But everybody makes mistakes, and that's why these processes are there. So this visit will not get pushed back over unless 2 things happen. 1, Shawnette can open it up, add an exception code, perhaps to say there was an admin error. That's a good use of the admin error. Don't blame that one on your staff. It's up at the top there, yeah. That was your fault. You didn't set it up right. Don't blame your staff. So if you add an exception code, that will fix this one visit. But the way this error is likely to play out is you're not going to notice for a week or so, or at least a couple of days. And so you don't necessarily have to go push every visit over individually. What you can do, Shauna, why don't you just back out of this one and go back to the dashboard and show them that bulk submit. Yes, so if we do bulk submit, we can go find all the visits for Brianna that will all be rejected for the same reason. And here we just have one because we're doing it the easy way. And we can go ahead and scroll to the bottom and say, Therap, go ahead and resend those over. I have fixed the issue. So when you have something like that, that's not directly part of the visit, but it's part of EVV, you can go ahead, you'll find it. You probably, by the time you notice it, you'll probably have 3 or 4, or if you're not paying that close attention, you might have 10 or 12 visits there that all have that same error. None of Brianna's visits are going to go in until we fix that. The bulk resubmit is a great way. Fix the issue first, and then go ahead and resend all those visits over. It'll say validated if we go look at it now. And eventually, those will get accepted as well. And do we have time for the, yeah, we got time.
Resubmit works. The bulk resubmit, you guys, works really, really well. Just like Kevin mentioned, like maybe you forgot to geostamp their address or the Medicaid because you know there's going to be several visits and you've made that correction. I would use the bulk resubmit.
Yeah, we're going to try to catch you and fix those ahead of time. But again, humans make mistakes, and that is how you'll fix that one. That last one there, why don't we go ahead and fix that one too? The one right above it. I think we only have one more invalid. So that one's just letting you know the visit was missing an address. How did that happen? That's because we did a manual check-in and the administrator forgot to put it in. So we're going to edit actually the visit slot rather than.
I apologize. That's what I meant to do.
No worries. So we'll go
all the way out.
Yeah, so there will be visits to fix. A lot of them will come just from errors. Sometimes they'll come from the process, which is you checked in out of state. Doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It's just the process says, please go ahead and double verify that you did this on purpose. So yeah, this one we checked in manually. The administrator, again, we'll blame the administrator for a lot of these errors. You won't be able to blame that many on your staff, believe it or not. But you will have to put in the address of the check-in and check-out in order for that, and an exception code in order for that visit to get accepted. Until it's accepted, in the future, you won't be able to bill against it. So definitely get in the habit now of getting your visits accepted. And I talked about this before. Does every visit have to be accepted? No, not if you don't want to bill on it. So if your staff did something, accidentally checked in the middle of the night, thought they were checking emails or who knows what, and it's not a real visit and you don't want to bill for it, you can go ahead and delete it. Or if the aggregator doesn't like it, you go, that's fine. I don't like it either. So the goal is not to just blindly fix everything to be accepted. You want to review and put in what actually happened. And again, there's times where you just go, this is not a good visit. We're going to go ahead and delete that. If you delete it in Therap, it will show up as deleted in the aggregator as well. So that is your new process. It goes very easy if you have good EVV data most of the time, or when you're doing your manual entries, you're doing them completely and accurately with the correct exception codes. So yeah, thank you, Rebecca. We hope it is. Again, we're going to support you on the first push. And again, some of those errors, like the wrong rendering provider number, you just have to do that once, and then it's not going to be a problem again. So we're gonna, our team's going to work with you. Shawnette's going to work with you to get those right the first time, and not have those visits rejected. We really don't want to have you have, 1,000 visits going back to January marked invalid. So we're going to help you do the quality assurance, and then push that all over, and you just go forward. So all those things we talked about in the setup, you kind of could put them on the shelf a little bit and just focus on getting, we do know you're keeping your service auths up to date, because you can't check in without that. But you can check in without the right Medicaid number or the rendering provider number, but you won't be able to get it into the aggregator. So all of those setup pieces, revisit them. If they're part of your workflow for when you hire a new staff, great, you're probably in perfect shape. If you've been not been dealing with that, just doing the minimum to get the staff on board, we'll revisit that with you and make sure that's part of your process. When you add a new individual, you hire a new staff, make sure you just do all those things right the first time, and you don't have to come back to it. All right. All right. Other questions? We are, that is our planned agenda. What other questions do you have? And if you want to raise your hand and have the mic, you are welcome to that too. Somebody can help me figure out where hands show up.
As of right now, Kevin, we have no hands and no questions.
All right. Well, I will give you time to think of them. There are some resources here. Other questions. A lot of times you're asking those blended policy and technical questions. Then by all means, send those to both of those emails right here. Oh, let's see. It says there's a hand raised. I think we can give you the mic here, Rebecca, if I can find the right button. Oh, there it is. There we go. I think, Rebecca, you have mic controls.
I can unmute finally, yay. So I do have a couple of questions, and I know Shawnette's been working with us, out of these town hall meetings, but with doing the backlogging, because I know for our agency, we've had to do a lot of backlogging for January, February. So with starting the aggregator, will we need to get that backlog completed before this goes into effect?
When you say backlog, do you mean the manual visits?
Yes.
Yes, definitely. Get those off of your plate as soon as possible.
Yeah, Rebecca, this is one of the conversation you and I had that I recommended that. And yes, just primarily because the data is going to be pushed over. So we can't push anything that's not there.
And with those manual visits, we will need just to verify again, we will need those check-in and check-out addresses manually put in there as well.
Correct. Yep. EVV requires, that's the federal requirement, that you identify where the service started and where it ended. And that is done with, ideally with a GPS code captured right through the mobile. And when you don't get that, you need to do it a bit more manually, correct? IVR, if you do it from the registered address, we'll send that over for you. FVV will, if you've set that up correctly, we'll push that over for you as well. But if you didn't get one of those methods, then your manual process is required to put that in there.
And we have two great questions that are in the chat or in the question section.
So one of the questions was prior to provider billing, how will the aggregator data be exported for QA processes?
Prior to provider billing, maybe you could clarify that, Zach. I'm happy to give you the microphone here too. Exported to where? Is that for your internal QA, or yeah, maybe you could clarify that a bit here. And where is Zach?
Zach, are you, I think he might be asking, how's that data getting sent over? How's that getting pushed over?
I'm gonna unmute Zach if you want to, or type in.
Check 1, 2.
Hey, Zach.
Yeah, so I am curious how we can pull aggregator data before we bill, since we're not billing through Therap, so we can do internal QA process on EVV and our billing data.
Yeah, your existing reports will do that. Let me, I'll make sure to visit on that one too. So that you can pull specifically you want to pull specifically accepted visits with that accepted
Correct.
status. Yeah.
It'd have to be from the aggregator as far as I could think of then.
It'll
so
come from
curious.
your Therap side, because your Therap side is going to be a reflection of that. If it's accepted in the aggregator, it'll be reflected in your system as well.
Oh, so I'm unsure of what report that is. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I will clarify that as well.
Appreciate it.
Good question.
And then we have another question from Melissa. When will this meeting be posted to be able to watch?
Usually they get up by the end of the week, or I think Monday at the latest. Just depends on the quality and if it worked. All right. Other questions? And again, most of you should be getting an email here to start scheduling that setup in just a week and a half here or so, I would assume. Yeah, go ahead, Zach. You still have the mic controls, I think.
Yeah. Has there been consideration to a third-party module for being able to get electronic signatures for legal reps that are not on site for delivery of service?
Yes, there has been consideration of that. So nothing that we're in production with in this project, but that is something that we have already done in one place, and we're doing it in a few other places in our system. So we are very much considering that as a new reality going forward.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Kevin, at this time, I do not see any hands or any questions in the Q&A box.
I do not.
So if you don't have a
either.
question at this time, feel free to send the questions, if you have any, to therapevv.net /Alaska or to the EVV. Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin, I was reading the wrong one.
Yes.
So of course it was aksupport@therapservices.net. And of course, email the DHSS EVV@alaska.gov mailbox. So if you have any additional questions regarding travel, don't forget that, as Sherry stated, the policies around PCA travel, it hasn't changed. The regulations are actually available online. I just checked that. So the regulations for the PCS when traveling, or CFC PCS when traveling, it is available online. None of our processes have changed. So if there's a specific question about EVV and PCS travel, feel free to email us via that EVV mailbox. And you can also CC the aksupport@therapservices.net.
I did copy both of those email aliases in the chat. So if you're like me and you don't want to write it down because you might not be able to read your writing like me, go ahead and copy that and then you guys will have it.
Thank you, Shawnette.
You're welcome.
All right. Yes, questions welcomed. We do know we're moving into that next phase, so there is a couple new things to learn. We are going to be supporting you all through that, and look forward to a day probably not too far in the future where the aggregator's running with stats just as smoothly as the EVV check-ins are, which means still an issue here or there, but we'll support you with that. All right, well, I don't want to force anybody to just hang around here for no good reason. So I think we'll go ahead and call it a wrap. Again, if you didn't get your question, you think of it right after we end this, just send us an email, and we will probably talk to you individually very soon, and we will we will be reaching out to you, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks on this again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for attending today. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kevin and Therap.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, stay team.